Well, welcome today to a Titus 2 study. We are all about marriage maintenance, divorce prevention, and relationship restoration. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 16, it talks about the fact that we are God's jewels. And the jewel that we're going to be using as our symbol during this semester is the diamond. Diamonds are forever. Diamonds are made under extreme pressure in the depths of the earth using heat. And this beautiful, lovely diamond started out a lump of coal. And some of you may be feeling a little bit more like this lump of coal today, but you are being fashioned into a diamond. It takes time, it takes heat, and it takes pressure. But eventually that lump of coal will end up this glittery, sparkly, beautiful jewel. How wonderful that is. Well, to be more than just a diamond, though, to actually be a ring, and most of you, I'm sure, have an engagement ring. We all have that in our culture. That is the epitome of love. The diamond symbolizes love. We're beginning to get in the season where people are going to be talking about Valentine's Day, and you're going to see all sorts of commercials about diamonds. But to take that diamond and to set it and mount it and make it into a usable, valuable, beautiful piece of jewelry, you have to cut the diamond. Proverbs 31:10 says, a capable, a virtuous woman, who can find? For her price is above rubies. Well, in that culture, the ruby was the most important gemstone. But if we were translating Proverbs 31:10 today, we would have to say, an efficient, a capable, virtuous woman who can find? For her price is above diamonds. But that diamond must be, whoops, I knew I'd do that, must be cut for it to be usable. And it's really fascinating. I didn't know too much about diamonds until I started studying diamonds for this study. A diamond, actually, there are two ways that a diamond is formed or cut or made into a beautiful piece of jewelry. The first is, believe it or not, and I really had to read it a couple of times myself to really believe that this is a jewelry making term. The diamond goes through a process of cleaving. And cleaving is to cut along the planes of weakness. Now, if you're like me and you were raised on the old King James Version, Genesis 2:24 says, a man must leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. There needs to be some cleaving done if we are to become that beautiful jewel, that diamond that is set in this mounting that shows it off to all the world. There must be cleaving, and God cuts us as the jeweler, the master jeweler. God cuts us at our planes of weakness. I think you can see that, how God begins to see our weaknesses, and he starts trimming away at those points. And this is how those wonderful facets of your diamond are created. And that's what gives it the sparkle, because an uncut diamond has no sparkle to it. If we as believers want to have a sparkle, we need the cleaving of the master jeweler. Well, something else I found out about diamonds is another way they get them ready to be mounted as a piece of jewelry is to place them in a lathe and to put another diamond in with this, the first diamond, and turn that lathe on. And it's kind of a machine that tumbles the two, in this case, diamonds. Because we know that a diamond excuse me, is the hardest natural substance known to man. The only thing that will cut it is another diamond. What an awesome picture of what God does with us. He puts us in his tumbler of life with our husbands, with that other difficult person in our life, whether it's our mother, our mother-in-law, our children, our neighbor, whoever, and the tumbler goes round and round. And because of that, the diamond is cut and faceted. It's not a fun process, either of them, is it? But it's necessary. It starts with a lump of coal, and if you were to talk to that lump of coal would say, "Don't put me under heat. Are you kidding me? Don't put me under pressure. I don't like pressure." But we would ignore that lump of coal, and it would come out a diamond. And then we would put that diamond in that lathe, or we would cut that diamond along its planes of weakness, and that diamond would then come out with all of these beautiful facets. That, dear ladies, is what happens in marriage. Marriage has been so designed, and any of your relationships have been so designed where they rub off our raw edges, where they polish us, where they facet us. And one of the problems we have in this culture, especially with marriage, is this wrong idea that marriage is a contract. But ladies, marriage is a covenant. And that's very, very important. Now, the interesting thing about this concept is that the word covenant in the original means to cut. Isn't that interesting? There is a cutting when a covenant happens. We don't have time to go into it, but if you were to take your Bibles at home and read Genesis chapter 12, a very curious chapter because it describes the covenant that God makes with Abraham. And Abraham is instructed to take all of these animals and to cut them in half. And the passage describes Abraham taking these cut animals and putting them in a row. And then God puts Abraham to sleep, and God walks through these cut animals, thereby showing that a covenant is made between Abraham and God. In the Old Testament, there is always a cutting, a shedding of blood. Now, the ancient Jews were not squeamish, dear ladies, and they realized that the marriage covenant also involved a cutting and a release of blood. That was on the marriage night when the hymen of the virgin was broken for the first time, and blood would come on the sheets. And in their marriage customs, the ancient Jewish people would have a display after the consummation of the marriage. They would come out and show the sheets. They were not squeamish at all. Can you imagine if that had happened on your honeymoon? If someone had been waiting outside the door and said, "Well, would you hand me your sheets, please?" Kind of embarrassing, but it didn't embarrass them at all. And they knew that that showed that there was a true covenant between this man and woman and between God. So the concept of a covenant is so important. What saying a marriage is a contract does is it gives us a marriage that is just based on legalities. And therefore, oh my goodness, he didn't fulfill one of the 100 conditions that I set up. Guess I'll have to divorce him. Guess I got to break that contract and I need a lawyer. No, you don't, hon. You have made a covenant with God Almighty. In Malachi chapter 2, verses 13 and 14, and if you would listen carefully, because I'm going to be reading it out of the Message version. This is a new language, modern language version that I think really gives us the meaning of this section. It says this: "You fill the place of worship with your whining and sniveling because you don't get what you want from God. Do you know why? Simple. Because God was there as a witness when you spoke your marriage vows to your young bride, and now you've broken those vows, broken the faith bond with your vowed companion, your covenant wife. God, not you, made marriage. His Spirit inhabits even the smallest detail of marriage." We wonder why God does not answer our prayers. But we are covenant breakers. We cannot break God's covenant without suffering consequences, ladies. Now, some of you are perhaps sitting there like I would have been 10 years ago, saying to yourself, but you don't understand, Joanne. I married the wrong man. Well, according to Genesis chapter 2, God is ultimately the only matchmaker. And when you stood before the justice of the peace, a priest, a pastor, or maybe a friend who got his marriage license off of the internet, and whether you were in a church or out of a church, whether you were skydiving or scuba diving, it doesn't matter. Those vows that you said made that man the right man. That one sentence alone changed my total perspective on marriage. When you said your wedding vows before God, your husband became the right man. You made a covenant. The word vow, we talk about wedding vows. Well, that's just another word for covenant or oath. It is binding. It is a solemn, binding promise, especially one by which a person is bound to an act, a service, or a condition. We have lost, unfortunately, the solemnity, the importance, the sacredness of giving our word, of vowing before God. And that's what you do on your wedding day. In the old marriage ceremony, the pastor would often say, do not take these words lightly. Do not say them lightly. We need to hear these kinds of admonitions because we are dancing into marriages without considering the cost, the occasion, and the eternality of the vows. It says, till death do you part, does it not? And we all think that going in, that will be the way it will be. But we need to make sure that we have made wise choices. If you are here and you are single, I have some words of wisdom for you. And for those of you who are already married, you may have daughters, granddaughters, nieces, friends that need to hear these words of admonition. If you are single, there are certain 4 different kinds of men to avoid. Do not think that you can marry these kinds of men and change them. Oh, I'll just marry him and I'll love him right into right behavior. No, you won't. So, the 4 kinds of men that you need to admonish your young daughters, granddaughters, your friends, yourself if you are here and unmarried, to avoid are first of all an unsaved man. God is not in the business of salvation through marriage. It will not work, or only by His gracious overlooking and giving us more than we deserve His mercy. But do not count on it. If you marry an unsaved man, you are making a big, big mistake. The second kind of man to avoid is an angry man. If you see that your fiancé, the guy you're dating, has anger problems, don't think they're going to disappear. You need to rethink that relationship very, very carefully. The third kind of man not to marry is a man who is a drunk. You meet him in a bar, he's going to probably stay in that bar. Not a good place to find a man. And if the man you are involved with or dating has a drinking problem, don't enter into marriage with him. Listen, listen, listen. You probably have many voices in your life saying, don't do this. Listen to those voices, whether they're your parents, grandparents, or friends. Then the fourth kind of man to avoid is a man who doesn't work. Boy, are you buying a whole lifetime worth of agony and work. Because if he doesn't work, guess who's going to? That would be you. So avoid this man. Let's be wise, sensible women, and let's give wise and sensible advice to our young single women who are coming up through high school and college, who are making these important life decisions. Well, we need to be warriors about our marriages in this country. We need to be warrior women of God in our homes. Exodus 15:3 talks about our God being a warrior. Exodus 15:3 says this: "The Lord is a man of war, a warrior. The Lord is his name." Being a warrior in the Bible has always been an honorable profession. Joshua, David, many other men of God were warriors. And we as women need to be warriors as well. We need to be fighting, but not fighting each other, but fighting for what is right. And there is a code of a warrior that we need to understand and adhere to. Throughout every culture, warriors have had codes to live by. And I think most of them, their codes have included these character qualities that we need to add to our life.